right, so after my red team is down and reviewers are now, or writers are now recovering, I went ahead and I'm getting ready to make the galette. So I pulled my pie dough out of the fridge just a few seconds ago. It's nice and hard. I pulled out my hummus. You'll see how I use that. And I use Sabra Classic Hummus. You could use any flavor hummus you want. You don't want it to overpower the vegetables that are in there. And I have my egg white for the crust. I have my roasted vegetables. I have my handy dandy rolling pin. My oven just hit preheat at 375. You could bake this a lot hotter than that. I choose to bake at 375 because I'm not looking for a dark brown crust, and it is a galette. And it keeps falling apart here because it's super cold. So let me see if I can get this rolled out and sticking together. Oh, my crust is really crumbly. This is the first time I've used the Earth Balance, so bear with me. We might really make this a rough crust because it is just falling apart on us. So we're going to get it flatter and then we'll work it from there. Put it back together. Squish it. Like I said, this is a galette. This should be a lot smoother than this. It should be rolling out a lot better. I'm not quite sure, other than the amount of fat that's in it, why it's not. It was definitely clumping together moist enough. So we're just going to work with what we got. There's always a way to recover from everything. Even putting too much salt in food, you can recover from that by using a potato. Too much, you can use a potato or carrot. Carrot will soak up the excess salt. Again, this is just going to get pushed back together. I want to get it so I can have an edge on it at minimum. Oh, it turned out to be a really crumbly dough. Oh, allergy season. It's terrible this year. They do have for rolling pins. I never use them. Well, I can't say never. I do use them on fondant because I like to make sure my fondant is an even distance. They have little rings that you can put on the ends of your rolling pins. This one is it's called a French rolling pin because it doesn't have the handles. It's oval shaped, so it's a little thicker here, thinner on the ends for your hands. But it gives a good consistent roll. It's a lot longer than most American rolling pins. I have seen, oh, there goes Dixie. I have seen people actually use wine bottles. I have done that in the past when I couldn't find a rolling pin when I was younger. I've seen people use broom handles that have been cleaned. They've specifically cut up broom handles just to do it. They like a smaller feel, I guess. So I'm just getting this crust together. Like I said, this is a rough pastry, a rough crust. Okay. It's meant to look rustic. I don't think it's meant to look this rustic. I'm going to figure out what's wrong with what happened with my dough. Dough has good flavor. I tasted it, so I'm not worried about the taste. I am a little concerned about the texture. But again, like I said, everybody can recover. It just takes a little extra work. As it's warming up, it's sticking better. I think that might have been one of the issues. And a little. Again, this is a galette, so it's not supposed to be a perfectly round pie. Get it as even as I can. And I'm not making a huge pie because this is just for me and Lisa for lunch tomorrow if I survive my second vaccine without getting sick and I'm capable of eating. It depends, I guess, because I've heard all different people have had all different reactions. So I tend to have a really strong immune system. The only thing that usually gets me sick is allergies. And I've been working really hard to not let that happen this year. I have been taking my allergy medicine like I'm supposed to every single day, 3 times a day. Pollen is really bad this year. I noticed the car was, and I have a white car, it was bright yellow yesterday. So I didn't take it to the car wash yet because I would be washing it every other day. All right, so the dough is ready to transfer. Cross your fingers, I can get this transferred easily. Let's see, I have a large offset spatula. Who knows, it might fall apart. I'm putting it on a parchment paper lined pan. I get under it with my spatula. Again, I didn't want to add any extra flour to it. And I'm not rolling it over the rolling pin because it is very fragile, it appears. So I'm literally just going to lift it, slide it in my pan. Cross your fingers. I'm sure that parts, like right there, are just going to fall off. Yep. So let's see the best way to do this. Again, I'm not concerned with how it's going to bake. It is a galette. It's supposed to be rough. So we're going to let it be rough. We're just going to work with it. For those not using the vegan crust and have a, your own pie dough recipe, I'm sure you won't run into these issues. I could simply just remake this dough. I'm not going to. I think it's going to be just fine once it gets in the oven. It's just going to be getting it there. There we go. Onto my parchment paper. Put that piece back that broke. I know that most people don't have huge, large offset spatulas in your house. I happen to, because I use it quite regularly. So I'm going to work the dough now out of the flour, because adding more flour to it is obviously not smart. I probably could have used, it looked fine, it felt fine coming out of the Cuisinart. It probably could have used a little bit more moisture, but you never know. Like I said, with flour, it's always different. Let me clean my bench fast. Move the vegetables over. And part of cooking is making mistakes and learning from them. If you weren't learning from your mistakes, there would be no fun in cooking. It seems like every recipe I ever make turns out different for other people. I write it down for them. They make it. It turns out different than the way they tasted it at my house. All I can tell you is that happens to people. I do know that in the old days with cookbooks, cookbook authors used to not test their recipes beforehand. And so people were making stuff thinking they were really bad cooks because, they found it in a cookbook and it worked. And, such a famous author. And it wasn't their fault. It was mostly, and there's some pretty famous cookbook authors, by the way, even current day, that are responsible for that, and they still do that. They don't test their own recipes. They have staff, and they take shortcuts and don't test things, and so you end up with a recipe that tastes terrible, and it wasn't you. So the hummus, I'm going to spread over the top. I'm going to use, let's do 3 tablespoons. And the reason I'm adding the hummus is, again, the dough is fragile, as you can see, and this will stop the moisture from breaking in from the tomatoes, from breaking into the crust. I'm going to go right to the edges. Now, since I was having an issue with the dough being too soft, I'm not going to fold it over the edges. I'm just going to take the hummus out to the edge, using a small offset spatula to spread it. If you don't have a small offset spatula, I recommend you run out to Amazon and buy one, because you can see it's different than a butter knife or a regular spatula. It just makes it so much easier to spread ingredients without having to try and bend into a pan, or it's there, it's ready for you to do. So again, the hummus is down, and it's down to protect the dough well, it's going to give flavor, but it's also there to protect the dough from the extra moisture. I can actually do a little bit more. Someone's at my front door. It's there to soak 3½ tablespoons, heaping tablespoons. It's there to protect the dough from all the moisture of the tomatoes. I'm leaving about, I'd say, 1/4 inch along the sides of this dough. Typically on a galette, you would fold the sides up over. But since this dough is so wet or so dry and fragile, I'm not going to do that. Now comes the fun part, decorating your galette. So I've got all my vegetables. They've all been roasted. I've got my onions. I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle them over the top. Use my fingers to move them around so you don't get like one giant chunk with onion and no other chunks. Remember, this was just half of a sweet Vidalia onion, and I sliced it thin. Olive oil and garlic like the rest of the roasted vegetables. Okay, they caramelized, and they smell so good. They caramelized in the oven. Some of them didn't, and that's okay, because they obviously, with the smell in my kitchen right now from these onions, they are definitely bringing the flavor to the dish. All right, so that's the onions down. Next, I'm going to go ahead and put the tomatoes down, and I'm going to put them meat side down, skin side up. Put them however you want. I'm going to try and make it look pretty. I'll make that one into marinara since the skin fell off. I'm going to try, let's see, how do I want to design this? You know, this is, again, part of you eat with your eyes. So try and put them on here as pretty as you can. You can overlap them a little bit if you want. And again, these were just olive oil and garlic. I de-seeded them. There was a couple of reasons for de-seeding. One is the moisture level baked into the final product. You don't want it too wet. And the other one, which I forgot to mention, was there's a police officer that loved these up in Lebanon, my friend. He had diverticulitis. So seeds were something his body couldn't deal with. So whenever I cooked for him, I always de-seeded whatever I was cooking. Whether I was making a salad with cucumbers or I was using tomatoes, anything that had small seeds, I always removed the seeds because I knew that he couldn't eat them. He was really funny because one day he told me he thought that I was probably the only person that ever worried about his digestive tract. And I was like, well, you know, when you cook for people, you should know what they can and can't eat. I'm going to actually use all of these tomatoes today. And you should be able to cook for their food preferences. All right, last tomato in. All right, turn the pan. I'm not going to need the egg white because I don't have enough crust on the edges to roll over and brush, but if you were using a normal pie dough and it was acting normal, you would have egg white to wash around the edges of the pie to make it look pretty when it came out of the oven. So these are the asparagus spears. They cook down really light. Olive oil, garlic. They were just roasted. They have a really good flavor because I did taste them a little while ago. So I'm going to make a little nest. And then I'm going to stick a few here and there into the hummus on the edges. So I don't want it just in the middle. And again, you're eating with your eyes. If you were a person that enjoyed olives, I wouldn't use green olives, but you could put black olives in this. It would be a great salty complement since, again, I don't use a lot of salt, so I know Lisa enjoys olives, so I might put some olives in here for her. For me, not so much. I don't eat olives. I don't eat anchovies. Well, I can't say I don't eat anchovies because almost everybody eats anchovies. You just don't realize it. It's in so many foods. All right. So now, this is still at the vegan level. There's no animal products. And my decision now is whether or not I'm going to put Parmesan cheese on it. And I think it looks beautiful. And what I think I'm going to do is wait till it comes out of the oven and see, maybe just sprinkle some either nutritional yeast or Parmesan cheese on the top. The oven is ready. This is going in 375. I'm going to say for about 35-40 minutes. I'm going to check it somewhere along minute 25. Alexa, set a timer for 25 minutes. And we'll go from there. All right. We'll see you back here in a little while, everyone.